You've heard of Rosetta Stone, right?
Not that Rosetta Stone, but this Rosetta Stone. While it's true that the language learning company has made its mark by teaching millions how to speak other languages, the carved stone slab before you has changed history as few pieces of art have. When you look at the back and the sides, you might ask yourself, how could a big rock change the world? The answer lies in hieroglyphs. Coming from the Greek words hieros, meaning sacred, and glyphin, meaning to carve or to write, hieroglyphs are the key to understanding ancient Egypt. Before we look at its contextual importance, let's look at the Rosetta Stone's appearance. Carved from a single piece of granodiorite, the Rosetta Stone is divided into three distinct sections. At the top are hieroglyphs, in the middle is Demotic text, and at the bottom is Greek text. Hieroglyphs were used by ancient priests of the day. Demotic text was the commoner's language, and Greek was used by rulers or by the administration. The carved monument, or stela, measures 45 inches tall, 28.5 inches wide, and 11 inches deep, and weighs 1,680 pounds, which is almost a ton. In 1799, when Napoleon army officers found the Rosetta Stone, it looked as we see it today. The images in the middle and the right show how it would have looked when it was originally made in 196 BC. Based on later findings of comparable stela, we can estimate that there are 14 or 15 lines of hieroglyphs missing from the Rosetta Stone. Now that you know what it looks like, the next logical question is, well, what does it say? The text, known as the Decree of Memphis, explains how well King Ptolemy IV treated the priests. The inscription also states that similar tablets were to be placed in all the major temples across Egypt. All in all, what was written on the Rosetta Stone doesn't actually matter that much. What does matter is that when the Rosetta Stone was discovered, Demotic and Greek were largely understood, but hieroglyphs were completely indecipherable. The first known use of hieroglyphs dates back to 3300 BC, and the last known use was in 394 AD. That means that hieroglyphs were used for almost 4,000 years, but when they were discovered in 1799 on the Rosetta Stone, they had not been seen for 1,400 years. Almost immediately after the Rosetta Stone was unburied, the race was on to understand what it meant. A copy of the Rosetta Stone made its way to Britain, and a young scholar by the name of Thomas Young, who had already contributed to physics and mathematics, along with optics and medicine, took the Rosetta Stone under his wing to try to decipher it. Young is credited with figuring out cartouches, or ovals that enclosed groups of hieroglyphic text. He concluded that cartouches denoted royal names and eventually was able to decode the name Ptolemy by matching it to the Greek text. He also identified phonetic properties of other hieroglyphs. In 1821, after moving to Paris, a young Frenchman by the name of J.F. Champollion looked at Young's work on cartouches. Champollion, a brilliant linguist who understood Coptic, a language that had roots in ancient Egyptian, was able to decipher the names Cleopatra and Ramses while he worked with the Rosetta Stone. Champollion realized that the name Ramses was made up of symbols that corresponded to spoken sounds. By applying the same phonetic symbols elsewhere on the Rosetta Stone that weren't enclosed in cartouches, he discovered that hieroglyphs were made up of both symbols and phonetic sounds. Hieroglyphs were thought to have magical properties by the ancient Egyptians, and because of this, names were engraved in tomb walls and on coffins in order for gods to protect the deceased in the afterlife. A name engraved in hieroglyphics was thought to embody a person's identity. If a name written in hieroglyphs were obliterated or damaged, it was thought that their identity was lost along with it. Interestingly enough, names of pharaohs such as Tutankhamun and Queen Hatshepsut were removed from temple walls by their successors. So why is this important? Well, hieroglyphs are the main tool that we have to understand the ancient Egyptians. When we see art, we can interpret it in a number of ways, but when that art is accompanied with words and writing, a completely different understanding can be reached. When I think of the Rosetta Stone, I consider the incredible educational passage that it's provided for society. I think about the fact that the piece could have easily been discarded as rubble, as many artifacts are, especially during war times. The stela makes me realize how important language is, along with the written word, as well as passing down knowledge to the next generation. Had it not been for the Rosetta Stone, we would never know what we do now about the ancient Egyptian civilization. One of the most interesting things about the Rosetta Stone is that originally it was meant to be read by rulers and priests, but it has turned into a translation tool. This sheds a different light on art in general for me. I realize that the pieces from today may have an entirely different meaning generations from now. Currently, are we making art to be understood by only today's culture? Or are we considering that some of the meaning will be lost over time, with the possibility that the importance may have nearly no resemblance to its original purpose? Will art I make today have a completely different meaning years from now? The Rosetta Stone shows just how deep the significance of art can be. Art is not always art. Significant understandings of language and of an entire population have come about through the discovery of the Rosetta Stone. The stone's discovery and its interpretation proves why the study of art can have sweeping effects on our culture as a whole.